Michael was staying with you, did he have a cell phone?
When he first arrived, he had a cell phone.
Was there a point where his cell phone no longer worked or he wasn't using it anymore?
Correct, yes.
And then how would he get phone messages?
On our home phone, business phone, yes, sir.
You have or at that time you had a home phone that also was used for your business?
Yes, ma'am.
So was that a phone messaging system that you kept track of because you needed to run your business?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if Mr. Randolph ever left messages for your nephew Michael Miller on that line?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Any idea of how many?
It was many.
Like many, like 10 or many, many more?
Many, many, many.
Hundreds?
Yes.
200?
About 200.
Okay. And were you the person kind of sifting through those messages?
Yes, ma'am, I was the only one that went through those messages.
Okay. Did you think that the relationship between Mr. Randolph and your nephew was odd?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever offer to Michael to hear or listen to those messages?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he want to hear them?
No, ma'am, he didn't.
When was it approximately that you made that offer?
Oh, well, I would always let him know we had messages, but he didn't care to listen to them.
Okay. Do you recall if Mr. Randolph ever left Michael a message about a gun?
Yes, he did.
What was the nature of the message?
He told me he said for Michael need to bring his gun back home.
Okay.
Back to him.
And were you aware of whether or not Michael heard that message?
I know he didn't hear that message.
Okay. Do you know if Michael ever took steps to return a gun?
I know that my husband told him he had to take it back out of.
What her husband said.
I had to take it out of our house.
Objections to it.
Okay, I'll rephrase.
Okay, just trying that comment will be stricken on record, Mr. Record.
Okay. Did you ever, not what they said, but did you ever see Michael or your husband leave the house after that message?
I saw Michael.
Michael leave?
Yes.
Okay, and was that with a gun?
Yes.
Let's see. We'll get into the substance of some of these messages. Let's just talk numbers here. Remember, this is a guy. Thomas Randolph meets Michael Miller, basically, I think at a 7-Eleven or something, buys him a beer, and then boom, this bromance blossoms. He's calling Mike Miller's often as 3 times a day. Leading up to the time in which Michael Miller is killed. This hour, Rich Schoenstein still with me here. He is a litigator in the New York area, and Katherine Lizardo is a trial attorney in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Thanks both for joining. So, Katherine, that's not weird, right? This relationship that just kind of grows out of buying a guy a beer, and the next thing you know, he's a handyman and not even a very good one, according to the defendant. What's your take on this relationship?
I think the jury, like me, will be thinking, how is this happening with 3 times a day, almost 200 messages left by Randolph to Michael Miller? It's very unusual, of course. The defense was, in their opening statement, said that the defendant, Randolph, was just trying to be helpful to someone who was in need, who is Miller, but this is just way too much help, I think.
Yeah, you know, Michael Miller was just able to take advantage of the good nature and the kind-heartedness of Thomas Randolph, took him in as a friend, saw an opportunity for him to better himself by doing handyman-type work around the house. Rich, you know, weird does not necessarily equal murder.
Right, and one of the problems with this for the prosecution is that it's a strange relationship indeed. There's a lot of activity, and the prosecution wants to say that the defendant brought this guy into the house to kill his wife and then killed the defendant, and then killed the Miller, and that's definitely one spin on it. But another spin that I'm sure the defense is going to put on is, we don't really know what happened in this relationship. We don't know if what happened could have led Miller to come into the house on his own accord, looking to harm the defendant or to harm the defendant's wife. It's not just one possible story out of these odd circumstances.
Yeah, and you know, Katherine, let's talk about the substance of at least one of these calls about returning the gun. So, I mean, obviously we need to know more about this, but you know, there's at least the suggestion that Thomas Randolph loaned Michael Miller a gun. For what purpose? Who knows? We'll see. What do you make of it so far?
Well, it seems that we will learn later about what that gun is about, but it's likely that that's the gun related to the shooting. And I don't want to misrepresent case or casing, because I know the defense attorney was very specific about that the last time. And so there was an issue with one of the guns that Randolph supposedly threw out of the house after or during the call to 911. Whether that's the gun or not, we'll know soon enough, but that is definitely relevant here. That's why they're asking that question.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing up that case versus casing. I had finally forgotten about that. For those who didn't hear the opening statement from the defense attorney, quite annoyed if you call the part of the projectile, you have the bullet, which is the part that flies out, you have the gunpowder, and then you have the thing that holds the gunpowder, which is quite often called the casing, but not by this defense attorney. He says it's a case, and don't confuse it with what the sausage is. Hell, just bizarro. Thanks for bringing that back up, Katherine. So as we go back into this case here, the cross-examination of this witness might be helpful. Let's watch.
Remember saying that Mr. Randolph had only been at the house twice, ever. Do you remember saying that?
Maybe, I don't know.
Could you specify when she said it?
Yes. Do you recall previously in 2008 saying that, under oath, saying that he had been at the house, Mr. Randolph, on 2 occasions?
That means that he was sitting at the mailbox, because I only saw him I only saw him there in the garage once.
Okay, so if I understand you, you saw him once at the mailbox, and another time he was at the house for a total of 2 times?
I saw him twice at the mailbox, if I didn't put that in there.
Okay. So how many times did you see Mr. Randolph at the house or the mailbox near that area? How many?
Before the murder, about 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah.
Okay, so Katherine, what are we learning from this little snippet of cross-examination here? What's the plan?
Well, first of all, my observation is she's being asked about such a far-off event and testimony she gave before. That's why the witness is having a hard time recalling it. Let's keep in mind that the incident happened in 2008, and then the trial was in 2017. So she likely gave testimony there, and they're asking her, do you remember anything you testified to or said in the past? And as you can see, she's having a hard time being specific if that's 2 or how many. I would feel the same way. So the witness's memories here are starting to fade, which is one of the challenges when the event and the trial are so far apart.
Yeah, this is not a traditional cold case, but it has a certain feel in that sense. It was 15 years ago when the original crime took place. So, Rich, I think the prosecution has to convince the jury that this relationship between Thomas Randolph and Michael Miller was intended from the start to culminate in hiring this guy as not a handyman, but a hitman.
That's right. That it was set up by design, that Michael Miller was the patsy. The defendant befriended him, forged a relationship with him, and groomed him to come into this house and shoot his wife, knowing all along what he would do after that he would then shoot Miller. And that's the theory of the case. And obviously they don't have any of that on tape. They don't have any written communications to that effect. They don't have any witnesses of that. All they really have to go from what I've seen, is the volume of communications and the speed with which this odd relationship developed.
Yeah, and I think of 2008 compared to now. I mean, I've got Ring cameras all over the place, as a lot of people do. Very different case. Just 15 years later, I guarantee you there would be surveillance cameras, Ring cameras across the street, at the house. Not in this case, because it is a whopping 15 years old. Let's take a break. Stay where you are, guys. Good stuff. We'll come back more on the Randolph case right after this.